Your alumni love helping students and fellow graduates, but they simply don't have time to attend every event, answer every call, or learn yet another online platform. With Protopia, making an impact is easier than it's ever been before, ever. There's no new app to sign up for or use in our already busy lives. Students, alumni, or even staff can quickly ask for advice or networking via a simple form, email, or text. Protopia's artificial intelligence searches the institution's existing alumni data to find the best experts that are the most likely to assist based on experience, availability, location, and other factors. Each matched alum receives a direct, blind email to ask them to help, giving alumni full control over if and how they want to respond, whether that's by email, call, or a virtual meeting. And if it's not a good time, Protopia's AI simply reaches out to the next alum until the question has been answered. The student receives advice right into her email inbox and is coached to engage the alum to grow her professional network. Finally, our rich dashboard lets staff follow along, view detailed engagement analytics, and access updated alumni data. Protopia. Simple for them, simple for you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for listening to Alumless for Friday, April 25th, 2025. This is the People and Culture Driven Engagement Edition. I'm Ryan Catherwood. I am joined by my colleague, founder, and CEO of CMAC, Chris Marshall. Chris, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you today?
Happy Friday. On the show, we talk about engagement strategies in education advancement. And today, our special guest is Jeff Williams from the University of Maryland. So if you're tuning in, please be sure to make a comment in the chat of the LinkedIn event. Tell us what university you represent and where you're listening in from so that we can hear from you. We love being flattered that people are actually watching us live on Fridays. So help us be flattered a little bit if you're tuning in. And of course, leave a message by way of a comment or a referral on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to let people know about the show. If you haven't already, subscribe to the 30-minute bonus segment of the podcast by subscribing to the podcast. And you can listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And we're grateful for Max Leiston and the team at Protopia for their partnership and being a presenting sponsor of Alumless. Chris, so we often talk about engagement strategies, but thinking about it sort of from the outside, or looking outside, I should say, kind of alumni and donors and volunteers, sort of outward strategies, which is obviously very important. And we're going to do some of that today. But also today, I want to spend some time talking about focusing on some of the critical issues around the people that are doing the advancement work inside the shop. And why do we, so I guess let's get the conversation started around why it's so important to center sort of an internal team around culture and collaboration around advancement conversations. Just our guest today oversees both engagement and sort of human resources and talent. And so why might that be an interesting or important angle to take?
Yeah, I personally love it. I love the title. And even as recently as when we posted this on our LinkedIn feeds, the comments that were coming back to me directly and some even in the LinkedIn post about how cool a title this is. It's sort of very distinct in our industry. People have already sort of raised, I'm sure, Jeff can tell the stories about what he hears from his colleagues, been in the role for a while now, but I think it's critical. And my own background as a coach, I spent 12 years as a collegiate coach, and I worked with teams and people, and we were recruiting new people to that and building a culture and making sure individuals fit into that team to do the stuff we wanted to do in that literal sense. But in this case, in an advancement sense, you need to have that same exact. And what to me, it boils down to, we've talked about this on this podcast before, it boils down to building a culture where there's trust. And when there's trust at the foundation, you can do anything else on top of that. Set shared goals, have a common vision, work towards that in collaborative form to get to that outcome. To me, though, it's fundamental. And the fact that Jeff's role focuses on it, and Maryland has made a statement in this case to say this is that important. We're going to put these two things together and let that team get built with that stuff in mind. I think it's fantastic. I love everything about it. I can't wait to hear from him more about the details.
Yeah. And I think, as you pointed out, it's a unique approach, I think, but maybe one that more schools may take as we move forward and try to utilize our resources and our talents more effectively. How's it going?
Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Jeff, tell us a little bit about your role. You are the Assistant Vice President for People and Engagement. Tell us about how that role came to be and your title and what makes this whole thing distinctive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to start out by saying good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Chris, for having me on your show today. I was looking back, trying to figure out how Ryan and I got connected. And I looked and I see we've been connected on LinkedIn since 2016, which I think was kind of early on in my time at Maryland. And I remember I was following hashtag alumni relations. And this guy at Longwood University was posting about alumni relation trends and strategies, and got connected with them, and that was Ryan. And we have stayed in touch, and it's so I've learned a lot from Ryan, and was kind of one of my early influencers. And I just want to say it's an honor and great to be on this side now here talking with you, Ryan, about some of my thoughts. Just thank you again, and great to be on your podcast today. So my title I think is unique, and the way I think of it is that I oversee the human capital of university relations, which we call UR. And I would say my role is focused on activating our staff, volunteers, and alumni broadly to advance the goals of university relations. So this is created through a reorganization. Our team went from raising 120, 140 million a year to now 200, 240 million a year. So we have grown significantly. Our leadership team has grown significantly. And about a year and a half ago, we had an opportunity to reorganize and expand our leadership team, at which point this position was created. And specifically, I oversee the Alumni Association, our Board of Trustee Operations and Engagement, our Office of Special Events, and our Human Resources and Talent Management team for the Division of University Relations. And I think that this focus is really a really important area for us. We are Advancement is a business built upon and about relationships. I mean, that's what we do. We're in the people business. So thinking about our people as a group of people that we want to develop, that we want to cultivate, that we want to engage and activate, that made a lot of sense to me when I thought about my position in that way. And it's been fun. I'm coming up on my year anniversary on Monday, and it's been really a fun year. And I've been surprised at times to discover all of these areas where there is transferability or intersection between my units. And being in this position, I've been able to, I think, draw a lot of connections in places where we hadn't had before. So it's been a great first year. And again, thanks for having me on today to talk about it.
Jeff, I'm wondering if you are finding others who have a close to similar role as yours at your peers, schools, or anywhere. I know of a few places that have an HR person embedded in advancement, but having the combination of what's in your portfolio feels pretty unique. Are you finding any peers out there?
Yeah, there are a handful of folks I've found. I've been working on building out my connections in advancement of folks who have a similar intersection of responsibility. And if anyone's listening today, please reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But it is, I would say, still pretty unique, but something I get a lot of interest from, and my boss, our vice president, has also had, people contacting and say, hey, tell us more about this. How is this working? What have you found have been the benefits? What have been the challenges? So it is something that I think we've gotten quite a bit of attention about in the industry because it hasn't been done before. For me, I love doing things that have never been done before. I have a very entrepreneurial mindset. And, that's kind of the first thing is like to have a role like this, you do have to have somebody comfortable navigating in the gray and building something that hasn't ever been done before.
Love it. Love it. Good stuff.
Jeff, can you talk a little bit about some of the key ingredients you've discovered in terms of building a strong and healthy culture within advancement?
Yeah, and I think it starts with, and Chris kind of touched on this a bit, but I think it starts with having a strong organizational identity. You need to know who you are. And one of the things I did early on was begin to develop a vision, mission, and value statements for the Division of University Relations. And, we looked at this as the anchors to our work. All of our future work was going to be grounded in these ideas and ideals, I should really say. Our vision and mission that's saying, what do we do? Why do we do it? And our values are telling us, how do we do it? How do we make decisions? And, this was a months-long process where we engaged over 150 of our 200-person division through conversation, through surveys, through focus groups. And, developing this needs to be done in a really organic way. And I think it's best when it's done something kind of from the, I don't want to say bottom up, but that is done in a collaborative way. And then you have to think about what happens after you have the statement. It's not something that can sit on a poster on the wall. And so we're in the process of implementing these values across the organization and identifying the ways that we can really live up to our values. So we're working on, we have work groups from across the division that are helping to identify those tangible ways that our values can show up in our everyday work. And then I think the other thing that's really been key is communication. And Chris mentioned trust and all, and I think communication is the foundation for any relationship, is the foundation for trust. So, when I started in this position, we did a lot of internal analysis and introspection around our internal communication, which includes internal newsletters and meetings, and taking a critical eye at what are we doing well and what do we maybe need to improve so that we are able to communicate internally as well as we communicate externally. So I think those are kind of those key ingredients to strong culture, is like knowing who you are, knowing how to communicate.
Yeah, I'm seeing some technical stuff happening on the back end here. I apologize. I heard everything you said, Jeff. I love your answer. And Kim threw in on the chat that there was a question from, I think you touched on this in your answer just now, but let me just pose it and see if you can crystallize some of your points here. So the audience question that came in is, what do you think builds a strong culture and advancement? So you hit trust, communications, what else?
And I think having that compass of what do we do and why do we do it, and giving everybody the North Star, right? I mean, I think we, for a long time, didn't have a clear, we knew what we did, but if you were to ask 10 people in the division what we did, you probably get 10 different answers. And that's not what we want. We need to have clarity and a unifying North Star about why do we come to work every day? What is our impact? And whether you are processing gifts or you are out working with our alumni, volunteer leaders, or you are on the front lines asking for major gifts, what is it that is the reason why we are here to serve the university, to advance the mission of the university by raising philanthropic funds. And I think that has really given us all a shared sense of purpose. So I think it is really important to define that. If you don't have it defined, that's kind of step one, is to say, here's our vision, here's our mission, here's our values, here's what we do, why we do it, how we do it.
I love it. We work on that with clients all the time from an external standpoint, but you talk about it from how we work internally. Trust, communication, having that North Star. And then Scott Francis just put in the chat, stating your core values and purpose consistently, then loudly living those values and purpose in what we do day to day. Sums it up perfectly right there. Love it. Good stuff.
Great to hear Scott is tuned in. Hey, Scott.
And Matt Winston just jumped in. Matt from Binghamton, Scott down at Auburn, but Matt at Binghamton just jumped in. My top 5: a spirit of entrepreneurship, a culture of unfailing openness and honesty, a spirit of collaboration, great one, a focus on one goal, one direction, that North Star, and a true value of inclusiveness.
I'm here at Western Michigan University, and they've just been talking about their core values and mission and vision for the alumni experience here. It's such important work to be doing.
For sure. Jeff, off script again, Jeff. I hope you don't mind. This one isn't a curveball, but where did you pick this up? The knowledge, the leadership gene that's in there somewhere. It could have been something you're born with, but you've probably learned along the way from mentors that having that trust, communication, and North Star value, vision, mission kind of orientation had to come from somewhere in your development coming through the process here.
Yeah, great question. I have been really lucky to have a lot of great bosses. And I would also say I've been lucky to have a lot of terrible bosses.
You learn what not to do.
Yeah, you learn as much from a terrible boss as you do from a great boss.
Give a name. No, I'm just kidding.
No. But I will name, for those of you who know Amy Eichhorst, she was our first.
I love Amy.
Yeah, I was like, Amy, everybody knows Amy. I learned so much from her, just in terms of, how to, Amy had a background before she was in alumni relations. She was a lobbyist, which I think is such an interesting background to then go into advancement work. But what she taught me, what I learned was around building consensus, influencing others, and leadership qualities that, that's so important when you're developing a mission, vision, values. You have to be able to develop consensus. You have to herd the cats, and you have to be able to listen. That's another thing. One of the things I've done a lot is listen and engage with people directly one-on-one. I think there are way too many leaders who spend way too much time talking and not nearly enough time listening. And I think that that's something that has been the key to my success, is just asking good questions, listening, taking the feedback, and incorporating that feedback as appropriate into future strategies. I can't say I learned it anywhere in particular. I've been part of several strategic planning groups, and I've had some great bosses, and then just really approaching my work with understanding of the value of the team and the value of the people here. I think that the rest from there, if you can have those as your personal values of listening and building relationships, all that, you'll be able to be a strong leader and get things accomplished. So
accumulation of experiences and knowledge over time. Your hair gets a little grayer, you'll start to have more of that. Ryan, get us back on script, man.
I guess, Jeff, we'll talk a little bit more about strategies that have worked in retaining top talent or attracting top talent in a field that's got a lot of burnout and turnover. How are you thinking about those problems?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of something that we're working on literally right now. It was what I was doing this morning. So at the University of Maryland, prior to COVID, it was you're in the office 5 days a week. And then on March 13th, 2020, we went home for 5 days a week, and we were permanently remote. And then in about 2021, we merged into this hybrid policy that people love. People have loved it, right? And people love the flexibility. But now we're in 2025, and the policy that we created in 2021, we've observed that there are areas for improvement and ways that we can enhance our policy to drive culture and to drive productivity and to drive engagement of our staff and drive our outcomes that we're looking for. So I'd say I started this job, I think it was April 28th. And on April 29th, my boss says, we got to figure out a new hybrid policy. I'm like, great. This is probably going to be the least popular project I ever work on in my job. And it's on day 2, right? So, but, what did I do? We started by listening. We had a series of focus groups with staff, with managers, with employees who were fully remote because of their job was developed that way. And, we really tried to learn about what people thought was working well and what wasn't working well. And what we learned was that people overwhelmingly wanted to keep hybrid, but they actually said that they wouldn't mind coming to the office more if it was a good use of their time. So the idea of intentionality, our current system, because we haven't actually changed anything yet, our current system is that you have to come in a certain number of days a week or a certain number of days a month, right? And I'm sure a lot of places have that. You have to come in 3 days a week or something like that. And people said, that's fine, but I find myself coming to the office and I'm sitting in the office on Zoom with a bunch of people, not necessarily, they're in their offices or they're not even here. Maybe I'm the only one in the office. And I don't know why. It feels like I'm just checking a box and I'm not gaining anything by coming to the office. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about how can we make it meaningful? And how can we be more intentional? So what we've done is we're flipping the script, or we're saying, okay, we're going to think about what activities are best done in person. Interviews, onboarding, performance reviews, certain team meetings, maybe.
Collaborative team meetings, right?
Collaborative things, right? We're going to say that's when you need to be in the office. And so we're kind of flipping this to really focus on the why. Why do we want people to be in the office? What are the value of that? And we're still in the process of figuring out the specifics of some of this stuff, but people have really been supportive of it. And I believe, have really great buy-in from a lot of our leadership team. And I think the story, I want to just highlight how it's rooted in this idea of listening. And, what we were trying to do is create this culture of listening. And I think that's so important for retention. People feel that they're heard, they feel that they're valued, that we care about them and what they need to be successful. And then we take that feedback and we actually do something with it. We, hold ourselves accountable as a leadership team to being responsive. And I think that this has all really helped, because I think if you are experiencing burnout and turnover, it's really a symptom of a cultural problem, it's a bigger problem that you have with the culture of your organization. So if that's something that you're dealing with, it's signaling as something greater than that. So the last thing I want to say, because I talked about communication already, and this is something that, especially with the current federal landscape going on, all the stress and anxiety that's creating, being able to be transparent with people, as transparent as possible. So our VP, Jim Harris, has had like an Ask Me Anything style session a couple of times here in the last few months, where he is up on stage at a division meeting saying, what are your questions? What do you want? We have people ask or submit questions even in advance, and that type of transparency. And sometimes it's, I don't know, and it's okay to not know everything. This is a rapidly evolving situation we're all in, but we got absolutely tremendous feedback from people after that session who said, I cannot tell you how meaningful it was to, have that level of transparency and authenticity from our vice president. And I think all of that goes to creating this type of culture that will help to avoid the issues of burnout and retention. So I think that those are symptoms of a greater problem.
Chris, can you talk a little bit about, in listening to Jeff, some of your reflections on opportunities that exist in your mind to be doing the work of engaging internally alongside the work of executing this engagement strategy externally? Like what are some of the things that come to mind that shape your thoughts?
Well, what hit me right away, Ryan, was the parallels that Jeff was talking about. You and I have done dozens of strategic planning projects for clients, thinking about how do they engage their alumni. And we talk about North Star, vision, values to guide that work, and the why, all that we do. And we build values, vision, mission, priorities to be really clear about that work externally. And what you just said about what you're doing internally is the same exact thing. It's providing that internal team with the same structure, communication, all that you talked about before. So that's the first parallel I saw. I spent 12 years as a collegiate coach. So what you're talking about applies literally when you're doing it in those terms. And when you talk about it in these ways, you're talking about it literally as well. You're building a team. You're building a team that's going to move towards a common vision. And I keep saying I love it, but I love that you're thinking about it in these terms. I love that you have a role, that you come to work every day thinking about it in these terms. So kudos to Maryland and you for having this opportunity. I do want to point out, Josh Lee asked a couple of questions in the chat. His second one builds on the in-office stuff, the dynamic in office. And Jeff, I want to get your reaction to this. He said, do you believe, is there value in casual run-ins? So inside an office complex. Yeah, go ahead. Fire away.
No, I come to the office 4 to 5 days a week because, well, in part it's expected of me, but I also really believe in those casual interactions in the snack room, which, by the way, I forgot to talk about as a retention strategy. For me personally, like, food is my retention strategy. But those casual interactions where things just kind of come to mind that I wasn't even thinking about, I get to learn something that I didn't know before. I get feedback on things. I mean, absolutely so important for everybody. I think especially for leadership and especially for new employees, because relationships are built. I've heard, in order to build a relationship, you have to have a couple of things. And one of them is random unplanned interactions, right? So, and you have to have those frequent random unplanned interactions. And that is a key driver in building relationships. And it's one of the reasons why, growing up in school and college, you develop so many friends, because they're around you. You see people without having to schedule something on your calendar, right? So I definitely believe in that value. I think it's something that we've seen in tangible ways. The way collaboration happens and creativity, it's often happening in unstructured, planned meetings and gatherings.
Yeah. It moves the needle on what you're trying to accomplish in terms of building culture. Those unplanned, informal ones.
Yeah. I was going to add to that. So one of the other things we found was that people, again, with this idea of intentionality, it was like, I don't want to come in 3 random days a week. I want to come in 3 days where I know other people are going to be there. This was a big deal because we thought people appreciated the flexibility to pick their work from home days, which they did, but they also felt like, and again, rooted in our values, we are driving the idea of intentionality of this in person, and we're looking to move in a direction where for at least some of, if not a majority of your days in the office, we're going to make sure you're in the office with other people and you're not just sitting in an empty hallway because you're checking a box on like, I gotta come to the office on this day just because.
Day, right. Yeah. Yeah, I know we're getting to the end of our first half hour here, Ryan. I'm going to ask you the final question, but Ryan and I both have experienced this, Jeff, is that we work 100% remote, and we get what you're describing when we go to clients. Now, I've gotten to the point in my career where I hate travel, but I love it once I get there because of exactly what you just described. Yeah. The getting there part is the part I hate now. It's when I'm there. I was spent yesterday with Matt Winston at Binghamton in the morning with his team, and it was the highlight of my week, just being with people and those interactions with the energy you build off of in an office environment like that. So I missed that part. So I'm going to bring us home, Ryan, and ask you the final question here. Who are our guests coming up on Alumless World and Alumless next week? Fire away. Tell us who we got coming.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. On Alumless World, we got a great episode featuring Hannah Fox from Regent University in London and Mary Rose DeLauzen from Sutton Trust, also in London. And we talk about the trials and errors in advancement. And they actually have a podcast that we're going to talk about where they specifically talk to people about the mistakes that they've made, which is a great way to sort of add a really important conversation to our field. And then we have the following week on Alumless, Heather Stanley, who is the new Senior Director for Alumni Experience at Western Michigan here in where I am right now. And she comes to the role from the Alumni Board, experience in education. And they just won the National Hockey Championship, and she's kind of trial by fire here in terms of getting her legs underneath her in a new space, but she's doing amazing work. So we're going to talk to her about what that's been like. And so everybody, thank you so much for listening to the live show. Jeff, you did a great job.
Thank you for having me, and good to see you, Chris, as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right, we'll record our bonus segment with Jeff, and we'll be back after the break. If you're listening on the podcast, and everybody else, we'll see you on another episode of Alumless. Take care.